everybody, we're in an amazing day today. Vita Carnis, season 2, first episode of season 2, New Beginnings, dropped 6 days ago. So like only a week or two after I uploaded my part 2 of the previous, watching these few episodes, part 2, season 2 dropped. I'm not going to pad for time. We're just gonna go right into Vita Carnis season 2. New Beginnings. If this would load, that would be very nice. If this could go full screen as well.
Today something has happened within the restricted zone, where a large group of cultists have been apprehended. Several teams of military personnel have arrested some high-ranking cultists and have unmasked their identities to the public. Shockingly, several of these members are well-renowned politicians and high-ranking members of multiple governments across the globe.
Many documents have been released providing sufficient proof of the atrocities that were being committed. Some of these crimes include murder, kidnapping, torture, ritual sacrifice, and the list goes on.
The members are
Chemical
found guilty
weaponry.
of deliberately providing false information to the public in an attempt to cause harm.
The New Trier Company has been found to have very significant ties with cultist activities and has been shut down. All New Trier products have been deemed hazardous for consumption.
Cultivation farms are facing pressure to shut down.
Public unrest grows as the New Trier cult case brings more crimes that were hidden away to light.
No way,
The
it's
people are
the
outraged
mimic.
by how little was actually being done.
They demand that something be done to handle the Carnis people.
Riots appear in the streets as protests begin to turn aggressive.
Our leaders were plotting against us. Who do we trust? What happens now?
And then they have a singularity. First impressions, I like this, or I really like this, the opening session, because it actually does kind of confirm a lot of things that we know or have suspected. The New Trier Co. being linked to the cult activity, so yes, it probably is 100%. The flavor enhancer is definitely host of influence spores. I know I said harvester like 3 different times in the previous episode by accident. But yeah, so this probably 100% confirms that yes, it is host spores used in the flavor enhancer. And as well as that, they say that the government has been spreading false information, which would explain the difference in information between the Mimic Defense instructional tape and the Living Meat research documentary section on the Mimic, explaining, because they're very different. The Living Meat one says that they cannot be harmed by firearms or blunt objects, and it's simply just run and hide if you want to get away from a Mimic, and just hope it doesn't find you. But in the Mimic Defense instructional tape, it says that they are susceptible to firearms and blunt force objects. Which, now that we know that it's wrong, most likely, because the government was spreading false information, me and I purposely misspread information online, because of that, it's probably that everything said in the Mimic Defense instructional tape was wrong. And now, after the raid on Facility Zero, they now have, I'm assuming, all 7 singularities in containment.
Welcome to Magister's Wonder Show. I am the Magister, and get ready to explore all of the world's wonders. Today, we are learning about the Circle of Life.
Carcass. Oh, they're back. Dr. Marshall Tredozzi. Pretty sure Vita Carnis is the
Test
singularity.
report number 4. We still know very little about the nature of the entities. There are 7 singularities in total.
Yep, we know
Each
7
singularity is roughly
Shenron.
1 meter in diameter. They are made of an unknown material, although it looks and feels very similar to glass. We are unable to sample it in fear of causing potential damage. The material is very dark in color, but has red shimmers of light swirling inside. There are some hints of other colors present, but is mostly dominated by the red. Each entity hovers above the ground in a stationary position. although they can be moved with relative ease. Our equipment can detect some subtle pulses of energy in rhythmic but random patterns.
That almost sounds like laughter.
We don't know what they are. We don't know if it is breathing or communicating. We don't even truly know if they are even organic. This is nothing new, just confirming what we already know.
Sorry to pause it again, but here, this definitely sounds like laughter. Like that sounds very much like laughter, and that's coming from the singularities. So, seemingly, the singularities are right where they want to be, potentially. Because why would they be laughing like they're the king from Clash of Clans?
Just confirming what we already know. Our first experiments didn't give any interesting leads. The most we got was some interference with electronics, especially when there is more than one kept close together. But the experiment we conducted showed extremely significant results. The experiment played out like this. In test chamber 1, a live cow was released into the chamber with V1 for an extended period. They were left together for 24 hours. The test showed minimal results from the entity and an increase in stress from the cow. Next, the body of a cow was put into the chamber with V1 for 24 hours. The results were extraordinary.
Oh, wow. Oh. It turned into the
5
crawl.
hours after the whole body had been ingested, concentrations of crawl rapidly grew from several points from within the chamber. What this could mean, it rewrites everything we knew about the Vita Carnis species.
That it does. It took the cow's corpse and turned it into the crawl, which, yeah, it completely re-scrambles everything we know. So rather than a big crawl creates trimming, meat snake, mimic, harvester, host, monolith, and potentially the singularity, we would move the singularity to be a stage above the crawl and potentially move up maybe even the monolith to be above the crawl as well, based on seemingly how, like, tied together the monolith and the singularities are.
Allow the crawl to grow out. First, a young larva hatches from within its egg. It will roam around and find food to help it grow and grow. Once they are big enough, they transform into a pupa. And after some more time, they transform into an adult beetle. The adult beetle will go out into the world in search of food.
Dr. Rhodes Series Scandara
Audio
Carnis. This is a
log.
day later.
Progress report for crawl samples. Cultivation has been successful. So far, we grew them with 3 specific environmental factors. 1 is our control group, 2 with access to additional nutrition sources, and 3 with exposure to radio signals.
We know the species does interact with radios, as we see with the trimming. Yeah,
Group 1 grew on par with standard crawl samples.
makes sense. There's
No
no
distinct
outside
abnormalities.
influence affecting its growth rate.
Group 2 grew at a faster pace than the control group, as expected.
Makes sense,
No
yeah.
distinct abnormalities.
Have access to more nutrients and obviously go for the nutrients first. Seems to grow out a lot
Group
more,
3 grew
though.
against its normal pattern, weaving its way toward the radio. Once the device was claimed, it switched to usual growth patterns. Again, no distinct abnormalities.
It looks like after cleaning the radio, it grew out
In
a lot
conclusion,
more than
the samples
other
that
two.
were grown in V1's test chamber don't seem to differ from others grown from other sources. Still, we will continue with more factors and further groups, just in case. There have been some developments in the propagation group. V1 samples have seemingly been able to produce nodules at a slightly quicker rate than wild samples. Control groups show that V1 samples begin node development a few days faster. More time will be needed to say for sure. As for the nodes themselves, there aren't any distinct abnormalities. We have successfully hatched a dozen Carnish juveniles, several trimmings, 2 meat snakes, and even 1 mimic. We will be sending them to the enclosures after everyone's reports get sent out. End log.
Yeah,
And then is ground into a fine mint and is now ready for the garden.
Let's crawl. Fawn Petitro Ignavus Carnis.
Audio log.
A day later.
Progress report for trimming colony. Significant progress in learning the social patterns of a group of trimmings we have been keeping together. A new batch of juveniles were added to the main colony at the beginning of the new progress report.
They're actually kind of cute, though.
They were accepted into the community immediately. No conflict or rejection observed. They did provide the circumstances to document more of their interactions. Trimmings communicate through a series of vocal cues. Colony members meeting the new batch with squeaks and squeals. They also are not afraid to show us when they are upset. Trimmings also use some physical displays as well. For example, trimmings do a chewing or chatter motion with their mouths when they are happy or interested in something. The experiment that we performed was to explore the extent of their communication skills. The test went like this. We took one of the trimmings and had them in place in a modified enclosure. A speaker would play 2 separate audio cues. A positive cue would play, followed by a treat. And a negative cue, followed by a small spray of cold water.
Aww.
We did several
Also very
rounds
nice.
of both audio cues to condition the trimming's response.
It hears the ding and immediately goes before because it knows the food's gonna drop. Aww. Ah, it's cruel. It's so scared. Aw. It knew the water was gonna spray.
After the test,
so
the
it
trimming
got
was released
prepared
back to
for
its
it.
colony.
That's cruel.
And after a few hours, we tested how much the trimmings communicated. Another speaker was placed near the colony's enclosure, where we played the same audio cues.
It spreads fast in trimming society.
It is incredible to see how layered their social interactions can be. Although, we tried something a bit bizarre. We found out that a wild colony had settled around the facility recently. It was strange what we did. It was a long shot. We set up a radio device near the wild colony and near ours.
Are they gonna respond to it as well?
We linked both devices up and played the cues.
Oh wow, that's... What truly does spread
There's
fast in
many
trimming
dangers out
population?
there in the world. There are many predators that would love to have beetles for a snack. And unfortunately, not all beetles make
So they
it.
must communicate
Yes,
through some
it is
other
sad,
means
but
rather
that's
than
how the
just
circle of life works. But
actual,
look, one
like,
of the beetles has
conversation,
laid
like,
eggs.
face to face.
And once the beetle's eggs hatch,
outside is able to
the
learn.
beautiful cycle starts again. and life continues on.
Okay. I mean, for the first episode of season 2, just gonna make sure, yep, that's everything. God bless. God bless America. More to come. So yeah, for our first episode, first impressions of season 2, that was very impressive. I really liked that. The budget has increased a lot. I really like the trimmings. The trimmings that we saw looked so much better than the hand puppet used in the first season. This episode completely changes a lot, confirms a lot of suspicions that we had, but at the same time completely changes the way we view the species as a whole. We knew stuff like something being up with Nutrier Co., that being confirmed that they were cult activities along with the government. So yes, stuff like host spores being flavor enhancer, true. Me and I purposely spread misinformation online, also true for the government with the Mimic defense tape. But there's some other things that we also learned. The singularity, so the singularity is seemingly the mother of the entire Vita Carnis species, which brings into question what their origin is, because we initially thought that it was just potentially, it was the crawl that did it. But it's not the crawl, it's the singularity that seemingly creates the crawl, which creates the rest of the species. And as I am having a theory, the monoliths are even beyond the crawl themselves, potentially just being made by the singularities themselves, because of how tightly knitted together the monoliths and the singularities are. So I feel like as the season goes on, we're going to learn a lot more about just like rearranging the Vita Carnis species' family tree, with now the singularity being above the crawl and potentially other things being moved around. And it also, we learn a lot more about trimming communication, because we knew that they communicated, and we also knew from the trimmings that the species as a whole has something to do with radios or radio waves, with the trimmings nesting under the satellite dish in the living meat snippet, and there where the crawl interacts with the radio first, it goes towards it, meaning they must be communicating with the entire species, because we see the trimmings on the outside that have no interaction with the trimmings on the inside of the facility. The trimmings in the wild colony react to the buzzer sound and the ding sound the same way as the enclosed community. The entire species must communicate some other way other than just direct face-to-face speech. But anyway, first impressions, I will say, very good, 10 out of 10, got my interest re-peaked, and I can't wait for more episodes to come out. And along with that, can't wait to be scared when a Mimic shows up, and I can't wait to blow everyone's ears out whenever I play the Mimic clip again, because I thought that was funny. But if you enjoyed this video at any point, please consider liking, subscribing if you're new, commenting down below how much I potentially blew your ears out by accident. I'm sorry if this video is very loud. I don't know what it is. It's just the Vita Carnis series as a whole. And along with that, it is me, Moist Critical, the Big Butt Chungus Farter himself, signing off. Also, subscribe to Darian Quilloy, please.